Welcome everyone to the virtual Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Today we're talking to Josh Kugler, the lead software designer for American Pinball. Over the past several years, he has helped to release 3 games, Houdini, Oktoberfest, and now Hot Wheels. So far, each game is ranked in the top 100 best pinball machines of all time on the Pinside Top 100. Josh, you've certainly made a name for yourself.
Well, thanks for saying so. I'm just trying to make great pinball.
Yeah. I know, when it comes to making great pinball, you have to put a lot of yourself into those games. So what got you into pinball?
I fell in love with pinball at a very young age. I was 8 or 9 years old when I first got exposed to it. Then when I was 10 or 11, I had a buddy whose dad was in the business. He sold pinball retail, so he always had games in his basement. His dad would take us to his retail store, and we got to play pinball there. So I've been playing ever since. I played through junior high, high school, college. So I certainly have certain games that are tied to certain times in my life when I was playing pinball, but had always been a fan. When I was a kid, I made pinball out of, nails and rubber bands. I started at an early age, and it wasn't until very much later in my life that I finally actually started making the real thing.
Yeah. So were you like, before you got into creating like games with American, were you doing just regular software development before that?
Actually, no. This is the first software development I've ever really done professionally is on pinball.
Oh, okay.
I worked with high-tech companies here in Chicago, leading software development teams and engineering teams and developing products and stuff like that. But was other than skunk work stuff, typically other people did the programming and I did management and the rest. So part of the change for me was to get my hands dirty, to get my hands on the keyboard, to get to do creative things rather than spending time in meetings all the time.
Right.
So when the opportunity came along, I very much shifted gears and direction in my career. It's really sort of a second career for me.
Nice. Well, what made you decide that you wanted to shift those gears and get into pinball development?
Well, part of it, I guess, started a little bit when I started doing some custom game developments. I always thought, it'd be really cool to do pinball, but it's something I hadn't pursued. And then some of the guys working for me came across the P-Rock, and they said, have you seen this? Like, you should do a custom game. And they all knew I was into pinball because I always brought pinball machines to work. So many places I work, I always brought a couple of my games in to, expose people to pinball. So I checked out the P-Rock. I'm like, this is cool. I always wanted to do my own game. I had done a retheme of a electromechanical game, which was the closest I had come. And then after I discovered the P-Rock, I started my own custom game and ultimately had done 2 custom games before American Pinball came in and recruited me.
That's awesome. What were the custom games that you made?
So the first one I did was the Kugler family pin, because there's no better way to get your family on board with you spending unlimited hours in the basement working on it, spending far more money than you would normally spend on a pinball machine to create your own pinball machine if it's about your family.
Yeah.
So it was a family themed. The modes were tied around different members of the family. There were also other things you had to collect to complete each member of the family. And that's sort of what it was built, and the structure was that way. And it's a really fun shooter. People really enjoyed it. Then the second game I did was a gambling themed game. My brother kept pushing me, and part of the drive on that were the toys. Came up with a couple of really cool ideas for toys on that. So it's a casino themed game, and there's a toy on there that's a dice popper, sort of like when we were kids, the game Trouble, and you'd hit the dice and it would pop up.
Right.
Well, this does that with casino dice. There's a camera that reads the dice. So, as in ball play, it pops it reads the dice, and you play your craps that way. And had a roulette wheel with the actual pinball being in the roulette wheel. So that game I did because we just had these cool ideas for the toys.
Yeah, that sounds
American
awesome.
Pinball recruited me to do Houdini. So.
You should talk to them about having them buy your casino game design off of you, and then that way
you never know. Actually, my games are at the lab all the time because I look at them or look at them for ideas and stuff. You never know, you might see it.
So since you work a lot on like the rule sets of games and that kind of thing, what game has your favorite rule set in it?
Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Hot Wheels. Hey,
it's an awesome rule set. That game looks like it plays amazingly. I haven't had a chance to get my hands on it yet, but I can't wait to.
Actually, the rule set on Hot Wheels is great. it's very different than our other games that we've done, and that was something that was important to us, that the rule sets are different. Honestly, I'm not sure if it's my favorite of the 3 games we've done or not yet. What I love about this game is it's got great flow to it. It plays fast, and the game is all about speed. There's still plenty to think about. There's a lot of strategy involved, and it's funny, as I talk to people who've been playing the game, they're discovering stuff that I'm like, yeah, I didn't really think about it that way. And in some cases, it's like, okay, we need to change that. Right. But so there's a lot going on in the rules, but it's more of a just step up and have fun. Speed, adrenaline, a lot of action going on. It's a lot of multi-balls. So Oktoberfest had 2 multi-balls, and they were a little hard to get to. This game is sort of the opposite. You're 4 shots away from the first multi-ball, and in a sense, you're 7 shots away from another multi-ball. So from the time you hit the start button, you can get into the action really, really quickly. And that was something we wanted to do a little differently on this game. So I haven't decided what to do best.
Yeah, so there's 5 multi-balls in this game, right?
5 or 6. I lose track.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and it was, just a little different approach. And part of it was because that's the direction the theme took us. We didn't sit down and say, oh, let's have a lot of multi-balls in this game.
Right.
We started off with, okay, here's the layout that Joe created for the theme based on speed. And then we said, okay, when you think of Hot Wheels, what do you think about? And we talked about all the different aspects of Hot Wheels. And one of the things that none of us had really experienced in Hot Wheels were these creatures. There's actually a fairly large part of Hot Wheels now. They have these play sets with Hot Wheels where you attack creatures and other things. That's something we weren't familiar with. And it was when we were researching that we came across the Hot Wheels City footage, which you can see on the screen behind me a little bit, as this is just a teaser of some gameplay, but you'll see some of those animations in there. And that's where we came across that. We're like, oh, this is great stuff. We need to use this. And we love the creatures in the battles. But more of us thought about, it's building tracks, it's racing, it's collecting, it's crashing, it's all of those things. And that's what then drove the rules. So multi-balls really kind of flowed a lot from that in the mindset of the game.
Yeah, I think that the the Hot Wheels City animations that you guys have, I think that really brings a lot of extra personality and stuff to this actual game that you really don't see that style of animation at all in the screens on current pinball machines or anything like that. So I think that's a huge add for this game as a total.
It's funny because
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, were you super excited to get to work, to be able to get those assets to be able to work with your game?
Well, when we first started, we didn't realize we could get those assets at all. We had already jumped into the theme, and we were working on some of the animations like you just saw there with the track building, which was a lot of our thought was going to be the 3D modeling and stuff. And then in researching the creatures, we were saying, okay, we'll make these creatures. And then we came across the series, and we're like, oh, this is just great footage. And the first time you look at it, you kind of go, oh, it's a little quirky. And then after you watch 2 or 3 episodes, you get pulled into it because it's just great humor. The people who did it did a great job with it. A lot of little details. And, we reached out to Mattel and said, hey, is this available to us? Can we get this? And, they had to do some, our contacts had to do a little bit of digging because it's a huge, huge company to determine that, it was footage that Mattel owned and that we were able to use it. So a lot of that, had to be tracked down. Who has the rights to what parts? And then I proceeded to watch just a tremendous amount of the episodes. I've watched them all way too many times because, you'll be looking for something. I wasn't happy with our tilt sequence. So last week, I was going back through footage. I had a new idea for the tilt sequence. I was, pouring back through episodes. I know in one episode there was this clip, and go back and find it. And so that's actually in the code release that we just did yesterday. Now has a new tilt sequence. Needs new sounds, but I like it much better than the last one we had.
Yeah, so that's awesome. It's always surprising to me, like how excited people get about the tilt sequences, because like I've always tried to avoid them, but when you see people showing off games now, like that's one of the first things everybody asks is, show us what the tilt looks like. So.
Well, I think over time, little things like that give you a chance to add some character to it. So it wasn't something at the top of our list. When we kind of got to it, we all started looking, like we had some stuff and it just didn't work. There's still disagreement on whether or not this one really works. Most people think it's going to work. One or two people aren't sure. I think when people see it, I think it'll get some good chuckles and some good laugh. Match sequence as well. It's one of the things people always ask for. This is the earliest we've done a match sequence in our game. Usually it's 3 releases in before I put a match sequence in, because to me that's sort of like the last thing you should be doing.
Right.
In this case, though, it's and partially because this code release was very complete. Certainly the most complete of any of our games as far as when games started shipping. Code's pretty close to where we want it to be. We're still adding some polish. We're still fine-tuning some scoring. There's still a couple of modes we want to get in there, a couple of things we're going to see if we can get in there, if we can, get everything we need to pull that off. Just because when we go through the footage, we find stuff and we're like, ooh, we need to figure out how to get this into the game. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with where the code is on the game shipping right now.
Yeah. So you talked about how, that the Hot Wheels City stuff didn't come till later. When you guys started, when you particularly start working on a game, do you have certain like rule sets or modes that you are thinking about that you want to put into a game, or do you just let the theme take you where it goes during development?
It's all driven by the theme. Now there might be some ideas we've had from previous games or other things that you go, ooh, here's my chance, to do that. The power-up thing was something I wanted to do in games. And Joe Schober, I think he was really interested in that idea, because when he first came on board on that, I said, okay, I got this idea for this. And then he took it and said, what if we do this with it? And so that was something that registered, and it worked really well with the theme, with the steins and the tents. So that really flowed really well. You want to collect these steins. Why am I collecting them? Okay, here's this reason. Now, what's funny is when we started on this, car collecting is obviously a huge point. And within the first 30 seconds of it coming up, it was like, but we will not be doing power-ups with collecting cars. That immediately weren't going to do that kind of a thing. So we took a very different approach with it. But again, like I said, we looked at it's track building. Okay, so how do we implement that in the game, and how do we get these battles in the game? And a lot of that's what drove it. Houdini was a very mode-oriented game because he performs acts, and that lends itself right away to being more mode-driven. Hot Wheels, because it's about racing and crashing and these types of things, that really screams multi-ball much more so. In fact, the modes are heavily driven around the creatures. And that's what kind of worked out really well with the creatures too, is because you want to have that mix in what's going on in the game. And the creatures gave us a great way to have sort of these traditional self-contained modes that are very understandable and very, you can relate to, is defeating the bad guy. You get this great bad guy in Draven, the evil scientist.
Yeah.
So that kind of really, the Nemesis stuff, which that was first introduced to us, these creatures, at first it's like, what are we going to do with this? And it was like, wow, this is just great. Works really well for pinball.
The cool thing, you talked about, how Hot Wheels, a lot of that has to do with like collecting stuff or collecting the cars. I think that helps draw the appeal for this game, because literally last week, it may have been the beginning of this week, I was talking to somebody that was, him and his son are Hot Wheels collectors. And so I was explaining to them about this game and how you guys made it to where you can put the cars that you have collected inside of it. And they thought that was the coolest thing ever. And they said they're going to check it out because of that. And, I think that's something that really opens up the door for, expanding the awareness of Americans' games.
I got to give Joe Balser credit on that, because pretty early on, he said, we're going to put cars on the game because it's kind of obvious thing to do. But he's like, but I want to make it so that people can swap them out. And he had a couple of different designs, and actually this very simple one we had seems to work really well for it. And it is very easy to swap in your own cars. You want to make sure it fits first. Occasionally some have a narrow wheelbase, but probably 95%, if not more, of the cars fit. And it's funny because I've heard from multiple people who are getting the game, and them and their kids are figuring out, okay, which cars are we going to put in the game when it gets here? So it's like, that's like an important part for some people. Let's get our cars in the game. And, if you have cars that have sentimental value to you, or just great looking cars that you love, Michael Grant, our sales guy, is a Hot Wheels guy, and he's got them in his office right now, lined up as he's trying to figure out like which ones. I think he's like, when we're not there at night, I think he goes into the lab and puts them on the test game when he plays. I think he puts his cars on, and when he's done, he takes them off, puts them back in his office. So yes, Now Michael's thinking there's a hidden camera that I know he's doing that.
So, the first two games, Houdini and Oktoberfest, those, I guess you could say, they have really strong themes, but this was your guys' first licensed game. Did that make a big difference during the development of it?
It's a very different development cycle with a licensed game.
Mm-hmm.
You have everything you normally have, and then you also have whatever the constraints and or limitations, or mostly it's the approvals.
Right.
That recognizing that everything you do, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of eyes that have to go over it and are going to want to see it before you can release things or do things. And so it just adds a little bit of time to the process. The people we worked with at Mattel were phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Ari is just a legend. She was just wonderful to work with. We'd ask for stuff. We'd ask for stuff. We'd say, "Oh, can you go do this?" We went back and forth. Just the amount of effort they put in to help us get the things we were looking for, to get us the Hot Wheels City footage, to get us the ability. They could have said, "No, that's not worth it." They were just great in bending over backwards to do that, to get approvals through. It's just that you have to go through that process. The brand people want to look at stuff, and the legal people need to look at stuff. So it just, a little bit different for me than previously. Mm-hmm. But the upside of having this great footage to work with, having this great product to talk about, Hot Wheels, you forget how big Hot Wheels is. And,
right.
We've been talking now for about 15 minutes. In the span of that time, I think they've made somewhere around 15,000 cars. They sell 10 million cars a week. It's a massive number, sold all around the world. And as you hear, everybody knows Hot Wheels. So it's not necessarily a theme you would first immediately think of for pinball, but it has all the elements you're looking for. It's just one that doesn't come to mind. And the other thing about Hot Wheels is they're everywhere. I didn't realize this until I started working on it, because you just don't tune into it. I don't have a child the Hot Wheels age, but at the supermarket, there's Hot Wheels in the checkout aisle. I was at a craft store. There was Hot Wheels at the end of one of the aisle caps. Walmart's got a huge, massive Hot Wheels thing. I was at a car parts place, Hot Wheels there. They're everywhere. They're still $1. I think they've been $1 forever, which is kind of crazy that I think they were, 40 years ago, I think they sold for $1, which was a lot of money then, but now they're still $1, which is just amazing.
Well, with it being a licensed game, and you talking about it does create the cycle a little bit longer. How long were you guys working on this theme?
Wow, it's hard to know. Probably from the time we first started talking to Mattel about getting it, I'm guessing is a year ago.
Okay.
I'm guessing it was about a year ago. I don't remember exactly when. We started, obviously Joe starts work on it first, on the playfield and stuff before we start really digging into it. We'll start thinking about the rules and developing that. But the rules really have to kind of flow a little bit from the playfield as well.
Right.
You have these various ideas, and then you say, okay, how do we fit this in, and how does that evolve from there? So we started really getting super focused on the code back in the fall when we finished up the last Oktoberfest release. So we started to do some work on that on Hot Wheels, but we're still working on Oktoberfest, giving it its final big facelift. Mm-hmm. And then since then, we've been just completely focused on bringing this together.
Mm-hmm. I know when you're working on software development like that, a lot of the final product that you see winds up coming in like at the last 10% of the project itself. So I bet that with it taking a year, does it feel like that last little bit? Do you feel like the pressure of the crunch, or is it spread out pretty solidly?
Well, there's always the pressure of the crunch when it's, when games are hitting the line.
Right.
And now you have the code, ready to go. So that creates a crunch, because what happens is you're trying to cram everything in you want. You want to get all this stuff in there. Then at some point you go, okay, well, now we're this far out, so now we have to shift gears and really focus on these other aspects to make sure those are there. And then also you realize, oh, there's all this other stuff that nobody cares about, but they care about it when they need it. And then let's make sure that goes there. And we've made some fundamental changes to our audio video system for this game. So there's stuff that we take for granted that at the end you realize, oh, right, we have to redo this because that was part of the old system and not part of this system. But towards the end, what you start getting into is a lot more of the choreography. It's the light shows, the sound effects, and starting to bring all those pieces in to really bring everything to life. And you start playing it more with that in focus, and you start seeing where there's gaps in the sound or in the action or things like that. And then we tweak rules or tweak the animation. So a lot of that, which is can be a lot of the fun stuff, it's just that last little bit. And that's still what we're working on now, is some bug fixes, but just places where, especially stuff we did early on, you go back and say, okay, there's some stuff missing here. It feels a little empty. And that's a big part of, what you're kind of focusing on here at the end.
Well, what part of that whole cycle is like your favorite part of development?
I guess there's different windows of time. Shooting the whitewood the first time's a lot of fun. The first time you really are testing out a chunk of the rules together versus individually. So we start off, we do work on a simulator for some of it. Because we don't have the whitewood yet. We're just it's quicker to get through things. So the first time you start actually playing the game with some content in there, and then the first time there's music is a big one. You don't realize how important music and sound is to pinball until you play without it a lot. Right. And when you first start working on a game, you have none of that. You're basically playing with placeholder animations, and no sound or no music at all. And then the first time that music gets dropped in, is the first thing that starts to bring it together. And then as you fine tune those things, and with the light shows, the game comes together. And so there's various stages where it starts to feel like it's like, okay, wow, that was really good. So there's different milestones along the way that make you feel like you're making progress towards what you're looking for. Because there are periods of time where you're like, I'm not sure this is working. I'm not sure this is going to come together. And at some point you play the game where all the elements, there are a lot of them, and you go, okay, yeah, this works. It's got all these different things are going on. Because at some point, like, is there enough in here? Then at some point you start going, okay, wait a minute, is there too much in here? We're losing track. We made a lighting change this week, and I sort of had a little mixed feelings. I'm like, okay, is there too much going on right now? And you had to play it for a little bit to say, no, I think we're still okay, that we have the right balance there.
Yeah. Feature creep can be a real thing, to where, you start getting at things like, well, it would be cool if we did this or if we did this, but then having to have the foresight to be able to pull back and say, no, we need to really focus on these certain things that we already started working on. That kind of thing is important.
Plus you get people on both ends. So people go, oh, the skill shot's too complicated. Oh, you should do all these things to the skill shot. And those are always those things. And we're always debating these things and looking for the right balance, that there's simple things, there's complex things, and that they fit together. We spent probably more late night hours discussing those things. Joe Schober is based in Virginia. I'm here in Chicago. And so at night, often with other members of the team, we're on Slack debating and discussing rules or concepts or ideas. And, but a lot of it is around those types of elements. Those things right in the game, that right balance in the rules. And is this too much? Is this too little, too hard, too easy? Getting opinions from different people at different skill levels.
Right. Do you guys do like when games start going out and hitting consumers, do you guys do like a beta program where like certain people that have the game can help you with like the final bug testing and that kind of part with the development cycle?
Yeah, we'll get a couple of people involved, either early game owners or other people that will get games for that kind of testing, as well as internally. But it's helpful to get fresh eyes. It's also why we host at our office, which has been a little tricky with COVID-19. Right. We've done some open houses, bringing in, basically you schedule time, you come in, you're in a room by yourself getting to play the game, and it helps us with just looking at audits and data, but getting that feedback from people. Certainly I brought in friends of mine who are pinball players, again, looking at different skill levels to get feedback from different people and how they look at games differently. Right? Because some people are looking at a game as a competitive player from scoring, and there's some people, are just a recreational player who just want to enjoy and have fun, and scoring's important, but not really. It's more about, the experience of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something we really spent a lot of time thinking about, is making sure we had some great moments in the game. For players, we want to get more kids interested in pinball. We want to create, when they play, they get that excitement. And we know, talking to some families who already have the machine, that while, dad might be flipper escaping through the opening sequences, which are fairly long,
Mm-hmm.
The kids still want to watch it every time.
Right.
They want to see the T-Rex come out, and I find more often than not, I'm watching it too. I don't know why. Occasionally I'm sipping through it. Occasionally I just, take it in, you take the breath. And in a game with a lot of speed, sometimes it's nice when the ball's held to just, take a moment before it, the havoc returns.
Right. So I know you have the 4 monsters in it, and then you have a like a mini wizard mode where you fight the scientist. What would you say your favorite mode is in Hot Wheels?
Well, among the creature battles, I think the one I find the most challenging is Cobra.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a little like whack-a-mole. So
Right.
the 4 main shots are lit, and you have to get the 4 shots basically, in theory, within 20 seconds. And if I haven't, then that first shot comes back. So after I hit a shot, 20 seconds later, it's going to come back. So you might have 2 or 3. You finally go to get the last one, and now one has come back. So that kind of creates sort of an interesting challenge. And there's always the one shot you can't hit, and it's
Mm-hmm.
different each time. Sometimes it's the ramp, sometimes it's just the left inner loop I can't hit. But I find that one just always kind of challenging to get. And there's some. It's actually when we had some of the least footage to work with, but it's some very funny clips in there.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I think what I really like in the game is, one of my goals is always to try to stack Loop Crash Multiball and Victory Lap Multiball. It's the only 2 multiballs you can stack together.
Mm-hmm.
They can both be very, very high scoring. So the combination of them, you can really help you keep the tack up. And they're focusing on some similar shots, so it's a really great way to get together. So if you can work the shots, and to be able to start them on the same shots, you have to start them together is the only way to stack them.
Okay.
So you sort of have to plan it a little bit, but the way the game's designed, somebody commented, well, yeah, once you're in this place, almost any player should be able to get the stack. Still
Mm-hmm.
takes some planning, and you have to. That's much further into the game, so you have to kind of work towards that. But to me, when I get the stack of those together, there's just some great action at the start, and it's a great multi-ball.
Mm-hmm.
I think Redline Mania is probably the kind of my favorite mode in the game, just because there's nothing better than seeing it happen to somebody the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're playing in the game, you're working up the tachometer, and suddenly you redline it, and the game basically just dies. And it obviously catches people way off guard when that happens. And then after it comes back to life, it's a 4-ball unlimited 40-second multi-ball where you're trying to hit the shots for some pretty big points, especially if you're an average player. It's a great scoring opportunity, because here it's 40 seconds, unlimited balls. The A players are probably like, yeah, there's more points elsewhere. But
Mm-hmm.
for some of us, it's a great opportunity to kind of get some points, advance to the next gear, and some other benefits. So that's I think, a really fun mode. And like I said, I really enjoy when people experience it the first time, because it's like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
That's always fun.
I really like the concept of the skill shot in the game, like having to rev the engine up and trying to get that to max out while also hitting the the third stop on the ball's launch and come back down. I think that's a really cool idea, and how that actually plays into the game with the overall scores and everything like that. I think that was a really nice touch.
The Schober skill shot, because some people felt that was making it too complicated. We should just stick with the kind of the tradition, this very, kind of a little bit of an old school approach of how hard you plunge to the different zones.
Mm-hmm.
So there was quite a bit of a debate around it, and Joe Schober was just never going to let it go, and it was gone for a little while. He's like, well, I'm putting it back in, and you don't need to play it. It's not essential. It's not a required aspect of the skill shot, and it does make it a lot more complicated. You're trying to do 2 things at once. So if you want to do that for the extra points, it can be lucrative. Most of the time I do it. Sometimes I'm not thinking about the skill shot. That's not what I'm kind of focusing on. And it can be mastered, surprisingly quickly, but it still
Mhm.
adds sort of another dimension to it, and kind of worth kind of getting the feel for it, figuring it out.
Well, I think you guys have a home run with this game. Everything from just the art package to the sounds, the music, and the software. I think you guys have just done an extremely good job with this game. So, congratulations! I'm sure I don't know if you know, but Houdini is ranked 65 on the Penside Top 100, and Oktoberfest is ranked 61. Hot Wheels doesn't have enough votes yet, but I'm sure it's going to be in top 50 for sure. So,
I don't get too hung up necessarily on the rankings. I think there's a lot of great pinball out there. I'm guessing anything in the top 100, I'm sure that I bet you I could probably find some things quickly in the next 100 that are probably games I take over many in the top 100.
right.
I think the feedback on Hot Wheels has been great. I think Oktoberfest is a game that not enough people have had a chance to play. And what you find is when people have played it, they're like, why aren't people talking about this game more? Just not enough people have had an opportunity to get to play it. We're actually out of stock, I think, now on Oktoberfest. I think they're all gone. I think they told me there's 5 Houdinis still left in the warehouse, something like that. But I'm excited about Hot Wheels, and it's been really well received. It's a really fun game. It's a really sweet shooter. So I'm expecting we'll be making these for quite a while.
Cool. Well, Josh, I want to thank you. Come on. Is there anything else that you want to say to the people
I wish
that
we were
are
actually
watching?
down in Atlanta, and then we were doing this at the show. I love coming down to Southern Fried Gaming. I've been down there 2 or 3 times. I think it's 3 times I've been down there. Maybe, yeah, I think it's 3. It's a great show. I do prefer the carpeted room over the new bigger room. I mean, I like the bigger room.
Right.
I might have to negotiate if I come back for a softer padded area wherever I'm standing, or has to be moved as I move through the show. I think we've seen that with a couple of the shows with the big spaces now. It's a little harder on the legs, in my old legs. But yeah, obviously it's a great show. I love about that show, I just talk to people, that it brings all these different types of gaming together. And I love walking through the hotel at 2:00 in the morning and seeing all these people down there playing board games. I don't get it, but I get that they get it, and that's for them what they love to do. So that's one of the things I love about the show. And I also love going to Taco Mac for chicken wings. And so Taco Mac, if you hear this, I'm endorsing your product. You can send some wings here to Chicago. I went to school down in Atlanta. I lived off those wings, so I do miss being down there with you guys for this show. And hopefully next year we'll all be back in person playing pinball.
Well, definitely. Well, I look
Thanks
forward
for
to it.
having me on.
Yeah. My games are in my basement, and I have a slab, and I just have those like the bank teller mats on the ground that you I scoot around that way. It's a lot softer on myself. So I'll have to talk to the guys and see if maybe they can just buy a couple thousand of them to stick down there. So
I was at some show, and somebody will now steal this idea, and I haven't done it in a year, so it's fine. It was like this super thick stuff, and I said, "Do you have a knife?" So can I just cut out a piece the size of my shoe and I'll take some duct tape and just strap it to my shoe and walk around with those all days? And someday I'm going to market those. They're going to be called pinball slippers.
There you go.
And they'll be very popular at shows. And I'm sure somebody will steal this idea, and that's okay as long as they give me a free pair. So okay.
Nice. Well, again, I want to thank you for coming and talking to us, and I hope you have a great time with the launch of this game and getting those out the door, and I can't wait to see what game you guys have lined up next. So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for hosting this.